The recent attack on Diori Amani International Airport in Niamey, beyond being an assault on a piece of critical infrastructure, represents a stark, unambiguous signal. It demonstrated that the militant Islamic ecosystem in West Africa has evolved beyond rural insurgency in the Sahelian hinterland to a direct threat against the core institutions and economic arteries of the state. This shift marks a dangerous new phase in a conflict driven by a complex web of organizations whose alliances are as fluid as their violence is persistent. At the center of this landscape stands JNIM, Group for Support of Islam and Muslims. By sheer volume of attacks, it is the dominant actor, having entrenched itself as the leading insurgent force in Burkina Faso and Mali. Its operations, however, are not confined to that area. The data shows a deliberate creeping expansion into the northern reaches of coastal states like Benin, Togo, and the Ivory Coast. These patterns suggest JNIM operates less like a traditional army and more as an adaptable franchise, embedding localized cells within communities along porous borders where state presence is a rumor, not a reality. The second major pole comprises Islamic State affiliates, which constitutes a rival network. The Islamic State Sahel Province (ISSP) has established itself as a principal antagonist, particularly in Niger and Mali, often directly rivaling JNIM for territory and influence. Its rise since 2022 indicates the successful grafting of global jihadist branding onto local grievances and criminal networks. Meanwhile, Islamic State West African Province (ISWAP) remains anchored in the Lake Chad Basin, a persistent and potent force in northeastern Nigeria and parts of Niger. The persistent ambiguity in the data, with numerous attacks jointly claimed by ISWAP and the remnants of Boko Haram, reveals a critical truth. These are not rigid hierarchical organizations, but fluid networks in which fighters, commanders, and tactics bleed across factional lines, driven by convenience, survival, or local rivalry. This brings us to the essential flaw in viewing this crisis through a purely counter-terrorism lens. The proliferation of groups like Katiba Masina, Ansarul Islam, and others is not random. These entities are often deeply rooted in specific communal grievances, historical neglect, and economic despair. They are the manifestation of a collapsed social contract. When the state abdicates its responsibility for security, justice, and development, it creates a vacuum. These groups do not just fill that vacuum with violence, they fill it with a parallel governance system, however brutal. They offer dispute resolution, impose taxes, and provide a perverse sense of order, which for many marginalized communities is preferable to the state's outright abandonment of predatory presence. The increasing frequency of joint attributions for attacks labeled as JNIM and/or ISSP, or ISWAP and/or Boko Haram is therefore a key diagnosis. It reflects more than just analytical uncertainty. It highlights operational collaboration in some instances, and in others, a deliberate strategy of ambiguity designed to confuse and overstretch security responses. More importantly, it signifies overlapping zones of influence where these groups operate in a tense competitive coexistence, sometimes clashing, sometimes avoiding direct confrontation to focus on their common enemy, the state. The geographic spread indicates a deliberate strategy. The Central Sahel remains the epicenter, carved up between JNIM and ISSP. The Lake Chad Basin is ISWAP's historic domain. The most alarming trend, however, is the sustained push southwards into the coastal states. This expansion is not an accident. It is a calculated exploitation of ungoverned spaces, weak border security, and transnational ethnic ties. The attack in Niamey, deep in southern Niger, and the steady encroachment into northern Benin and Togo follow this logic. These groups are testing defenses, building logistical networks, and demonstrating that no national capital is beyond reach. The implication is clear. The regional response, often fragmented and overly reliant on militarized solutions, is failing. A strategy focused solely on neutralizing terrorist leaders misses the point. These groups are hydras. Cut off one head and the conditions that created it will simply spawn another. The persistence of violence is a symptom of a deeper disease, the failure of governance. Sustainable security will not come from more battalions alone, but from a fundamental recalibration of the state's relationship with its frontier territories. It requires delivering credible justice, economic opportunity, and inclusive political participation. Without this, the militant ecosystem will continue to adapt, spread, and strike at the very heart of state authority. One airport, one village, one field promise at a time. The attack in Niamey was a message. The question is whether regional governments are finally prepared to listen and address the root causes rather than just reacting to the latest, most dramatic symptom.